All right, welcome. Good morning. It's going to take a couple minutes for everyone to join, so we'll give it a couple minutes before we get started. The way the Zoom works, the attendees slowly creep up, so I'll wait till they sort of level out before we get started. And this is a webinar style presentation, so you won't be able to ask questions aloud. You won't be able to turn on your camera. It'll be largely just Alan speaking, and I'll be sort of taking care of the Q&A questions. It looks like things are starting to level out with the number of attendees. So welcome, good morning for most people in North America. My name is Miles Brown. I work for a company called ExitCertified. And ExitCertified is a training company. We've been around since 2001. And we are partnered with AWS, have been since 2014 as an authorized training partner. Actually, maybe Alan, if you can up the next slide there, we have a couple notes about ExitCertified. It says here, we're a leading IT training provider with a 97% satisfaction rating from our students. We have a pretty strong internal team of instructors that have been around for a long time. And we've been doing virtual training for a long time. We started in 2012 doing virtual training. We started using Zoom in 2014 shortly after it came out. And so when the pandemic came, we kind of switched from probably about 60% virtual to 100%. And so we've done a very good job with that. We now have our training centers across North America are open again, although most people are still doing virtual training. We do send instructors to companies to do in-person training quite a bit as well. And we've seen some success with AWS. It's our biggest partner at this point. And last time, the training and certification team gave out a partner of the year for the Americas. It was us. They kind of suspended doing that a little bit during the pandemic. Today, we have a great presentation from Alan, who works at AWS. He's a senior partner development manager with AWS Training and Certification. He's focused on growing the number of AWS certified builders through a global network of AWS authorized training partners like ExitCertified. He has extensive experience in technology learning and development with demonstrated success in business development, sales, marketing, training, delivery, operations. I've worked closely with Alan for the last few years. He's been a great partner manager for us. And he really knows a lot about AWS training and certification. So I'm going to let him take it over. And like I said, I'll sort of be there for the Q&A. I'll talk a little bit about some of our courses right at the end of the presentation. So Alan, please take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Miles, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. As Miles said, my name is Alan Middleton. My pronouns are he, him. And I am the partner development manager that works directly with ExitCertified. As Miles said, ExitCertified is our largest and most valued partner delivering authorized training on AWS to our builders out in the community, both new and experienced. And they have been an exceptional partner to us and a great resource. Their customer service, customer satisfaction stats are through the roof. So if you are considering working with ExitCertified on your AWS cloud journey, I highly recommend them, which is part of the reason that I'm here today co-presenting with Miles. Today, we're going to talk about the value of AWS certification. I have a few goals for our time today that I hope will align to your interest in joining the session. We'll share some data to help you quantify the value of AWS certification. We'll look at some of the different categories of certifications that are available through AWS so you can see how they are aligned to either your current role or perhaps one you're thinking about in your future. We'll talk about the different methods for taking an AWS exam and what that process looks like, because it is a bit of a process. And then, as Miles mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the training you can take to help you on your cloud journey to support your certification goals, to achieve that sort of desired certification. I hope once we cover those points, you'll be well equipped to make a decision about moving forward with your plan to get AWS certified and ultimately put a timeline to that for yourself. So when we talk about AWS certification, the first question that always comes up is there really demand for cloud certifications in today's market? And the answer is a resounding yes. So this is a stat you've likely seen before, or one like it. There's a shortage of cloud skills today. And IT decision makers are desperate to hire a workforce with adequate cloud skills in order to achieve their business goals and outcomes. In fact, when surveyed, most decision makers say that the lack of cloud skills are their number one roadblock to grow their business. And most also cite candidates with cloud skills as their number one hiring priority. Cloud skills touch a lot of different functional areas in a lot of different industries. If you pull up any job board and input cloud, thousands of jobs come up. So it's just a fact today that if you're in IT and thinking about the future, if you're just starting out or thinking about making a career change, pursuing a cloud certification is an investment with a long-term high yield of return opportunity. Speaking of future opportunity, this slide here references a report sponsored by Dell and authorized by the Institute for the Future that surveyed more than 2,000 tech business professionals. And all of the respondents agreed that they believe that 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't even been invented yet. And when you see that statistic, it seems kind of hard to believe, but then you think back to what has happened in the last 30 years with the growth of the internet and the cloud that created so many jobs, and it makes perfect sense. There are thousands of cloud jobs available today, and that trend will only continue. So how can AWS certifications help you in your career journey? And let's look at that from sort of the recruiter's perspective. So in a different report published by HR Dive just a couple of months ago, most recruiters surveyed, 85%, believe that candidates exaggerate their skills on a resume. Now, one thing that cannot be questioned on a resume, which we all know is your calling card to get any job, any promotion, any special project assignment, is an authorized certification credential. So if I'm a recruiter selecting a group of candidates to interview for a cloud-based role, I'm likely to prioritize those candidates that have a vendor authorized certification achievement. So there's no question that a certification validates your ability to perform. In the study I referenced a couple slides ago, the top 15 skills employers are hiring for, AWS Cloud Practitioner is cited as the number one most in-demand cloud certification. Why is that? It's because the demand for AWS drives the need for AWS certified professionals. So Andy Jassy, who is AWS's CEO, recently said that he believes AWS currently has only 4% of the total addressable cloud market. As we say at AWS, and you'll hear this frequently if you do become involved in an AWS cloud journey, it is still day one. To put that into context, according to Forbes magazine, AWS has half of the current public cloud market with over 1 million active accounts. So if 1 million active accounts represents only 4% of the market today, we have a very high trajectory coming over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. 96% of organizations use cloud in some way, whether that's an application or a project-based initiative or as their total solution. And they're just getting started understanding how the power of the cloud can change and grow their business. 86% of those organizations are deploying multiple cloud vendors. So as an IT professional or someone who aspires to be an IT professional, knowing one cloud in today's IT stratosphere is not enough. So again, the data supports a clear need and demand for AWS certification. So what is an AWS certification? So the first thing to know about AWS certifications is that it's a credential that's earned by you as an individual. It's not a team, it's not an organization. You personally, individually, are demonstrating that you have successfully prepared for and passed an exam that validates your skills through a third-party testing proctor, certified by AWS to validate your skills. AWS certifications are industry-recognized credentials designed so that cloud builders, such as yourself, can showcase your AWS knowledge and skills to your peers. AWS exams are rigorous, and that means that they are valuable. AWS certification volume has grown significantly since 2020, upwards of 85% year over year. Again, market demand for AWS certified builders has generated that growth, and we anticipate that that trend will only continue. It's also important to know that anyone can obtain an AWS certification. So AWS does not require any specific training or specific education background for you to take a certification exam. If you're a cloud builder or aspire to be a cloud builder, you're welcome to become AWS certified. Now, there are some ways to help you be successful, and certainly completing AWS authorized training content that supports a particular certification or learning path with a trusted partner like ExitCertified is a best practice, and one that we see quite frequently to contribute to that success. But if you don't choose to do it that way, that's okay too. The other point about AWS exams is that our certifications are created by AWS experts. So when we create a new certification or add new questions to an existing text, we gather experienced experts who either work at AWS or at our customers or at our partner organizations. And they actually decide what's on the exam, what questions we should ask, what it should take to pass. That way, our exams reflect practical knowledge and skills sourced from people who are actually doing the work every day themselves. And again, this is part of what makes our certifications high value for candidates and for the employers that look for those certifications to validate a skill set of a particular individual. So that you can be successful, AWS does provide a syllabus of knowledge in our exam guides, which is a summary of all the skills and abilities AWS experts have identified and expect for someone in a particular role or specialty. Again, taking training is a big part of developing that knowledge and those skills. I tend to think of training as the connective tissue that puts everything together and supports you to achieve, a highly valued certification. So what's in it for you? Why do individuals, builders, cloud enthusiasts, leaders, practitioners, or anyone looking to transition into a cloud career, why do they work to prepare for and take an AWS exam in the midst of all of their other competing priorities for time? The reasons we hear most often from customers boil down to the following benefits. First and foremost, I've mentioned already, credibility. Earning an AWS certification shows that you meet the bar set by AWS. It's an external third-party validation that helps sort of quantify your credibility. Confidence. Whether somebody is new to the cloud or is working in what is a very rapidly changing environment, particularly when you think about things like machine learning, earning a credential, seeing that pass score, it helps give you as an individual the boost that, says, hey, you know what you're doing, keep going, trust yourself. Recognition is key. It can be hard for you as an individual to show, to fully articulate your credibility in a day-to-day setting, in a setting where you're working with a new manager, a new employer. Having that industry recognized credential sort of highlights your achievement and speaks for you in that regard. To establish yourself. Certainly opportunity. IT professionals tell us that they are looking to impact their career. They might be making a career pivot. They might be trying to get onto an exciting project. They may want to get promoted. AWS certification is a very specific milestone on those journeys that can help you get to the next step. And finally, it's motivation. Candidates often tell us that they need the accountability of setting an exam appointment and a specific goal to help them prioritize learning, studying, and breaking out of their daily task list to focus on developing their own individual skills. Now I'll switch our lens a bit to the organizations that are looking for AWS certified professionals. And AWS certified candidates are finding opportunity because AWS certification has real meaning for organizations. IT leaders consistently say that by employing AWS certified staff, it helps them to build faster. It helps them to improve security in their environment. It reduces downtime, critical downtime, which costs money, as we all know. It improves and shortens deployment time. AWS certification contributes to employee retention in keeping folks engaged in their organization. And most importantly, I think on this slide, for me anyway, is really the last point, which is drives innovation. So 91% of IT leaders say that by employing AWS certified staff, it serves as a catalyst to identify new and different ways to take advantage of AWS services in order to develop new products that drive more revenue, right? And IT leaders are constantly focused on and challenged with expanding product offerings and driving the top line revenue to increase their bottom line profits. So AWS certified professionals, they say, help them do that. So let's shift gears and talk about the certifications themselves. So AWS offers 12 certifications today. To earn each one, you take a corresponding exam, one exam per certification, with a passing score achieves that certification. There are 4 levels of AWS certification. There is foundational, associate, professional, and specialty. The certification structure is designed so that once you've earned a foundational credential, you move into a role-based learning path that aligns with the most common functional requirements in most IT organizations. So those role-based learning paths begin at the associate level and then get more refined at the professional level, and then really dive deep in specific IT specialty areas as you gain more and more AWS knowledge and experience. So the most common question we hear is, where do we start? And the brief answer that AWS suggests, but we don't require, is that everybody starts with Cloud Practitioner. Cloud Practitioner will give anyone who's new to the cloud or to AWS specifically the appropriate foundation that you need. If you have a goal to earn a more advanced certification, and we certainly hope you do, it's still helpful to verify your fundamental knowledge before tackling anything more complex in another exam. Now you see here that AWS suggests, keyword suggests, 6 months of experience in cloud, but that's not absolute. So if you choose to take the suggested or recommended training and you do some of the other activities that we suggest, and we'll touch on those in a moment when we talk about the classes we recommend and so forth, you should be in good shape. Most people start with this certification, whether you have IT background or existing cloud fluency or not. If you're wanting to enter IT, this is the perfect place for you to start. If you have a cloud adjacent role, if you're in finance or marketing, some of the business areas that are not necessarily in the IT bucket, but you touch the cloud and you need a basic understanding of the cloud for your functional purposes, this is also a great place to begin. So the Cloud Practitioner exam, again, is foundational, is offered in several languages, and the cost for that exam is $100. The associate level certifications are going to be more rigorous. And you can see here that AWS recommends 1 year of experience solving problems and implementing solutions in the cloud. Now, if you don't have actual in-role work experience, there are other ways to get similar knowledge. Doing labs in many of the classes, creating a free AWS account, playing around with the services. Those are also ways to get experience in the cloud. So if you don't have hands-on experience, you'll definitely want to consider taking instructor-led training and work through those labs, perhaps take some practice tests to make sure you're ready, etc. So these 3 associate level certifications are based on roles in the cloud: solutions architect, developer, and SysOps administrator. Now, each of these roles functionally do the things you might assume. So solutions architect would have the ability to architect and deploy well-architected systems that meet business needs. SysOps administrator would deploy, manage, and operate systems on AWS. The developer is going to be our code writer, developing and writing code. These associate level certifications, the cost is $150. And again, these are also offered in multiple languages. Moving up to professional level certifications, to pass these tests, you really do need some significant experience on AWS. And we at AWS recommend about 2 years of hands-on in-role building with AWS products and services. AWS offers 2 role-based options at this level: the solutions architect and the DevOps engineer. Content on these exams is going to be pretty expansive. They're going to focus both on breadth and depth of knowledge to pass these 2 particular certifications. These certifications also available in multiple language, and the cost for these exams is $300 per test. Finally, we move to specialty certifications, which are for professionals with deep experience or expertise with these particular topics: networking, data analytics. Some of you will know that as big data. We just recently shifted the name of that certification. Security, SAP on AWS, and machine learning. These are all topics that you will want to experience for a while to understand them deeply enough to be able to pass this level of certification. Again, going back to the value of certifications, accomplishing a successful pass on a specialty certification indicates to colleagues, to employers, that you are very well versed topically and can deliver and perform in these particular role environments. The fees for these exams are also $300, and there are multiple language options available for them as well. So altogether, that's the 12 available certifications for everyone, no matter what your background or experience. If you have more of an IT background, it just means you might get through to the associate level a little quicker than somebody who does not, and that's okay. AWS is dedicated to supporting builders of all levels, and this structure sort of allows you to do you exactly as you want to. So we've talked about certifications. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits you receive as an AWS certified professional. First, you receive digital badges that you can add to your LinkedIn profiles, your email signatures, your digital resume. At AWS summits and conferences, and we have quite a few frequently, we provide special recognition. There are invitation-only events within those larger events that are exclusive to those folks that are AWS certified. We have a global community on LinkedIn, and once you become certified, you will receive an invitation to join that community. Because we all like stuff, we provide access to an exclusive AWS certified merchandise store where you, as a certified AWS professional, can order merch that looks different than someone else's who may not be certified. One other point here, if you're thinking about sort of the dollars and cents, is the discounts. So once you achieve a certification with AWS, you will automatically receive a 50% discount voucher or code to use on your next certification exam, as well as a free practice test of your choice for you to prepare for the next certification. So going back to the levels of certification, even if you're considering, coming into the certification schema at a higher level, sometimes it behooves you to take the certification test a level below you in order to then receive that 50% off benefit so that your higher level certification test is a little less expensive for you. I share that with folks just because most people don't think about that, but it's certainly worth your while. So we talked about AWS certifications. We talked about the benefits. Now what? So the first thing you need to do to make certification a reality for you is to create a plan. And you need to make a commitment to yourself and to your preparation. The very most important step that I see is that you schedule a test date. If I'm scheduled to take a test on December 1st, and I know that there are roughly 8 weeks in front of me to prepare, I can work backwards from that. I can figure out which classes I want to take in prep. I can schedule them with ExitCertified, and then I can build in my post-class study time accordingly. There are, I mentioned earlier, lots of options and resources for you to study on your own as well. AWS.training.com has lots of resources that are great supplemental resources like white papers, blogs, hints, tips and tricks, all those things that will ultimately support your success. You really do want to take some practice exams. You need to get used to and get comfortable answering questions in a timed fashion. You need to get used to the way that the questions are asked, because they are somewhat unique in the way that they're written. And over time in those practice tests, you'll be able to develop sort of a sixth sense about what the right version of the answer looks and sounds like. And that's important because it builds your confidence. It helps remove some of the fear that comes with taking any test. I know I personally am not a great test taker, so practice tests, and I'm cloud practitioner certified, practice tests were very important to me. But give yourself the opportunity to feel comfortable and confident. Once you have scheduled your test date, you'll want to decide whether you're going to do that in a testing center or an online proctor. You will also need to create your AWS certification account so that you will be able to take your exam. And that's really important. I'll talk about that a little bit more here. Where and how you should test is really dictated by your personal preferences and your own circumstances. Some people prefer to go to a location that allows them to focus and eliminate any distractions that they might have in their home or office. Others want to be comfortable in their own space. Beyond that, there's a couple things to consider. Equipment. If you go to a physical testing center, you use their equipment. If you don't adjust well in that kind of situation, not being familiar with the tools, you may want to take it at home via online proctor so you can use your system and be comfortable with that. Date and time availability obviously factor in as well. Physical testing centers have limited hours and a limited number of test slots per time period to choose from. So if you go with online proctoring, you usually, keyword usually, have options that are available pretty much 24/7, depending on the particular day and time. I mentioned various languages earlier. Test language options are pretty much the same whether you're in a facility or on site. But one note is that if you choose to do an online proctor, the proctor who will work with you will be limited to only or either English or Japanese as a language. And that's the person who will check you in, validate your credentials, set you up if you started, audit your testing experience. So if that is a potential concern or a barrier that might impact your level of comfortability, I would consider that as well. Typically, if you go to a physical center, you will have whatever their local language, primary language is available to you. By the way, if you choose to take your test in any other language other than English, you typically get an additional 30 minutes to complete the exam. So if you're multilingual and you want more time, you could opt for another language to take your exam if that's something that would be comfortable for you. Breaks. You can take a break in a testing center. You're not allowed to take any breaks if you're proctoring online. So that's something to consider based on, again, your personal preferences. Physical testing centers, you get a dry erase notepad given to you to make notes to answer questions as you need. Whereas in the online proctor environment, you're going to get a digital whiteboard so that that proctor can audit the things that you're writing down and doing to make sure that they're in compliance with the rules. All of these little details are important as you consider taking your exam. Quick tips: if you choose online proctoring, these seem obvious, but you'd be surprised how these simple points can hang you up or trip you up and impact your test taking experience. It is critical that you read the confirmation email in detail. You need to know what the rules are. You need to internalize those so that there are no oops that impact your exam completion. Simple things. You can't speak or mouth words while you test. And if you do, your testing session is disqualified. So read the fine print. That's very important, especially if you are, like me, a nervous test taker. Run the recommended system tests well in advance, so you can pivot and make an adjustment if you need to, if there's a compliance issue or a machine equipment issue. And check in early. I suggest, AWS suggests 30 minutes in advance. Rushing last-minute unknowns can impact your nerves, your confidence going into the test. So set yourself up for success. Know what to expect, set up your equipment, get there early, so that all of that is not important as you dive into the structure and content of the test. Again, here, exam prep, exam readiness, test, practice tests are all very critical. If you're not a technical person or you're not good at taking tests, these things will help you enormously. Again, how is the test going to be structured? What will the questions look and sound like? How much of the test might be on one topic or another? It sounds simple, but it's all good stuff. And your exit certified account rep can talk to you about what those options and things are to add to your foundational tests. So in summary, we've covered all the topics I think we hope to. I hope you got a lot out of it, that you understand what the value of certification is, you understand the different types of certification and roles offered to you by AWS for certification, the methods for taking certification, and the importance of training and preparing for that certification. Miles, do you want to talk a little bit in more detail about exactly what folks should do next?
Sure. I'll take over the slides here as well.
Okay.
We had a couple good questions in the Q&A. The last one was a good one. He was saying, do I have to take the, say, foundational one before an associate? And there are no like prereqs that you have to get an associate before a professional or any of that. But I would say that you definitely need to have the knowledge that you could pass the exam. And but we do see, some deeply technical people skipping the cloud practitioner. We find that the cloud practitioner is especially popular with people who are maybe not really deep in, they're maybe like you said, a cloud adjacent. A lot of project managers, people who need to talk to the cloud people. We usually encourage them to go for the cloud practitioner. But some people just want to get that first one under their belt. The best practice for an AWS exam is to do another AWS exam, right? And so you get the idea of what it's like. And just to talk to something Alan mentioned about the online proctoring, try and get there half an hour early, because you are going to have to do a little bit of, you have to take picture of all four sides of the desk that you're working at. And I found the first time I did one at home, my office had mirrors on one side. They didn't like that. Like, you can't have any books or anything near you, obviously, because they're just going to see your webcam. So you have to take all these pictures right before the actual exam. I ended up moving to my kitchen table because that was there was nothing around. So give yourself that time. Another thing to mention is that right now the exams are, with the exception of one, all just multiple choice questions. But the SysOps exam does have sort of a hands-on component where they give you a management console and they ask you to do some stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's more exams like that down the road where, a good chunk of it is multiple choice and then there's a practical component. And so it's looking like in the future that hands-on experience with AWS is going to be more and more important. Now, the cloud practitioner is something that, you know, if you've been using AWS for a while, you say, oh, I can do that. It's still worth studying because there's a lot of, these exams, the breadth of knowledge you need is sometimes, I can work with the cloud for 2 years, but I've only ever used this small set of services. So what we find is that training really helps. Now, with the cloud practitioner, there is a pretty good on AWS Skill Builder, a pretty good, set of videos that you could go through. If you prefer instructor led, we do run that class fairly often. So if I go look at cloud practitioner, I think this is a hyperlink, should take me to my website here. So this is ExitCertified.com. If I view the schedule, we have this class running October 18th, November 1st, November 8th, November 15th. So almost every week. And wherever you see the GTR, that means it's guaranteed to run. So we run enough AWS classes that we have a very large guaranteed to run schedule, which means if you sign up for it, it's going to run, right? That's not always the case in the training industry, but we're pretty set on that. Now, we find that, the cloud practitioner is pretty popular because, it's a really wide net that it casts. But beyond that, the most popular certification we see is the Solutions Architect Associate. You could take a 3-day architecting class, pretty much for everyone, almost every one of those certifications. There's sort of a 3 or a 4-day class that kind of helps with it. We don't say that these classes they're not specifically exam prep classes, right? The 3-day architecting class is there to basically teach you about the AWS architecture and how things fit together. And it, in my mind, does the best job of giving you the full breadth of knowledge about AWS. The developer or the SysOps, they're a little bit more specific. So the developing, both the class and the exam are very specific about using, the services that you would interact with using the SDK and things like that. But the architect is the broadest. And so that's, I think, what makes it the most popular. We do have a 5-day exam readiness intensive workshop, which starts off very similar. The first 3 days is basically that architecting class. And then it is sort of intensive exam stuff where we do some practice exams and stuff. So that's your best bet to get really ready for the exam. And so these classes all run fairly often. But, no matter which certification you're going for, we usually have the classes. Now, there are 2 exceptions where AWS does not have an official class that maps pretty closely. And one of them is the question Fernando just asked, which is the SAP on AWS. Do I need to take an entire set of courses, foundational, associate, professional, or what? Well, here's the problem. There is no AWS authorized class for the SAP on AWS. So you kind of have to know SAP basics, right? So you could take training from SAP. ExitCertified also does that, right? So if you want to get some SAP training, but I assume that most people looking for that certification already know SAP and they want to know how to run it on AWS. What there is if you are an AWS partner, part of the APN, they have probably about 2 or 3 hour video on SAP on AWS. That's a good starting point, but we don't have a good instructor-led training. But you better know the basics of AWS. So take the, maybe even the architecting on AWS would be probably a good grounding in that. The other exam that we don't have a perfect, class for is the networking one. And the advanced networking specialty exam, it talks a lot about, generic networking stuff that is not AWS specific. And then, of course, it gets into the AWS specific services around networking. So we generally suggest that people looking for that, they better be networking experts first, and then they can come and take either the architecting class or the SysOps class, and maybe even the advanced architecting We have a question here. Any difference in course content between the architecting and the certified architect associate? Well, one of those is the certification and one is our class. So I guess between these two classes, I think if you mean these, the difference is, the second one starts with the first 3 days is basically the same content. And then we get into some extra exam related topics. And we do a few practice exams, as a group. Right? So we have lots of classes for the various exams. If you want to get into it, we can always talk to you about it. But what we find is that, moving to the cloud is often a lot more than just, hey, I need to take some courses on AWS, right? If you look at a real cloud journey, a lot of times it comprises technologies from a variety of vendors. A lot of times these days people say, well, we're going to move to the cloud and we're going to re-architect our application. We're going to use microservices. We're going to implement those using containers and Kubernetes. Maybe we're going to further embrace DevOps. And so at ExitCertified, we built this sort of what we call cloud-centric portfolio. And it sort of addresses training across all these sort of both commercial and open source projects that you might need to learn to build these sort of cloud native type solutions. So we've got some pretty great training. It starts here in the middle with the official AWS classes, but then around that we've augmented it. We've got a lot of other topics that might be of interest. So if you're interested at all, our website's exitcertified.com. You can check it out. You see a lot of stuff in there. The cloud centrics diagram you get to pretty quickly if you go to the topics and look up cloud, and then you can click on any of those sections and learn more about it. There's a chat right there that you could put you in touch with one of our sales reps who can get you started. You probably, if you're in this webinar, you may be already in our database. You probably get some marketing through us. One of the things we do is, if you're an AWS customer of ours, we usually send out our GTR email probably every 6 weeks or so saying, what's the upcoming classes that are guaranteed to run? So that's something that, if you're in that kind of, hey, I'm eventually going to go for my, say, data analytics specialty. Well, you got to walk before you can run, right? So you'll probably start with some introductory training and then maybe one of those sort of intermediate level, the architect class or the sysops class, and then you go into the big data type classes. So these days we've got 4 one-day classes that we're going to bundle as a 4-day class, and that'll get you, pretty much on your way to being ready for that data analytics exam. So I think that's main content we wanted to deliver. I want to thank Alan for his time today. AWS is a really great partner of ours, and we've been very happy with the support they provide us and the courseware that they develop. They develop this courseware and then they update it. We're seeing updates almost every 2 weeks because the cloud is such a moving target. That's why authorized training, I think, is so important. Can I share the Cloud Centrics link? Yes, I think I can. Let me go find it. I think it's just ExitCertified / I guess I could find it right here. Somebody's looking for that link. I think if I just go to Cloud Centrics, that should get me there. Let me just make sure that I'm spelling it right. Okay, well, yeah, it redirects to this page, but yeah, that'll get you there. Hopefully in the Q&A, you can see that it is a hyperlink. I think it should be. Yeah, it is on mine. Some people have the hyperlinks in Zoom disabled, but hopefully you can click through that and get to our Cloud Centrics, and somewhere in there we've got the diagram. And like I said, if you click on a section like here, the cloud native and containers, it takes you to all of our courses on that. And, so if you want a Kubernetes class, we've got various, we partnered with a couple different companies for, so Mirantis is a cloud native company. They have really great training. The Linux Foundation also has, training that prepares you for their CKA and CKAD certifications. So that's kind of the idea there. The other link I'll put in is just our AWS training page as well. I wonder if I can put that in there as well. I think that'll work. I can just tack that on top. Yeah, that works. So if there are any other questions, we're going to stick around a little bit here. You can throw them in the Q&A. But otherwise, I think that Hillary said that we'll be sending this recording out to everybody who registered.
Yes, that's correct. Everyone who registered will receive the recording by the end of the week.
Okay, great. All right, well, the number of attendees is starting to dwindle. We'll wait a little bit and see if there's any questions that pop up. All right. Ooh. Oh, so Fernando, the link to the CloudCentrics is in the Q&A box. If you look at the answered questions in the Q&A box, you should see I put a couple of links in there. Guess I could put it in the chat as well. Let's see if that helps. Okay, I put it in the chat as well. So if you click on the chat, you should see it in there. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you for your time today. And we look forward to seeing you in a class soon.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.